Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy.
So I know you don't like your triggers, but if we're going to discuss the deaths of 2 children, I feel like that should be a trigger.
Why is it an if?
What?
You said if.
I'm saying for this case, if we're going to discuss it, which we is, then I'm going to throw it out there. We're going to discuss the death of 2 very young children. And
What
death
are we
by
calling
drowning.
very young?
3 and 18 months. Or, no,
They
my bad.
drowned?
3 and 14 months. And then we're also going to mention some sexual abuse, self-mutilation, and suicide.
On the 3 and 4 month old?
No.
Just checking. Because those seem like individual triggers.
No. So we're just going to get into it. On a cool October day in 1994.
Whoa. Who are we talking about?
On a cool October day in 1994, I ignored you. 3-year-old Michael Smith. 3-year-old Michael Smith and 14-month-old Alexander Smith were with their 23-year-old mother, Susan Smith. They were going for a drive in Union County, South Carolina. Susan was driving her 1990 Mazda Prodigy when she said she was carjacked by a black man and her 2 children were still in the back of the car. Susan told police that she approached a traffic light at an intersection and that the light had turned red, making her come to a stop. Susan claimed there were no other vehicles in that intersection, and it was at that point that the man approached her vehicle and carjacked her.
Did you
for
already
9
say what,
days.
Hold up. Did you already say what time it is?
Time of day?
Yeah. Like, is this
or
at
year?
night? No.
No, it's in the middle of the day. As far as I'm aware, it's the middle of the day. Supposedly.
Is it in a city? I guess it'd have to be, because I don't see any traffic lights in the country, but nobody's around in the middle of the day.
Apparently not. I don't think it's like a bustling city type scenario.
But there's generally human beings in the city no matter.
All right. Well, you done poked a hole in the story already.
Already sounds like bullshit to me. Flag number 1.
For 9 days, Susan and her husband, David, begged and pleaded on TV for the safe return of their young children.
So she's not even 20 years old?
She was 23. And she's got a 3-year-old.
71.
Yes.
I thought we were in 94.
Yeah. Do your math. Go ahead. I'll wait.
Yeah. I was kind of confused.
Anyway, so what's the word I'm looking for? Not married, but pre-married. Her maiden name. So Susan's maiden name was Susan Leigh Vaughn. She was the youngest of 3 kids.
Hold up. Her pre-married name?
Anyway, she was the youngest of 3 kids. She had 2 older brothers. She had a little bit of a rough childhood. In 1977, so she was about 6 years old, her father, Harry, committed suicide. And Susan was depressed because she was close with her father. And when she was around 13, she attempted suicide.
She was 7 when her dad committed suicide?
She was about 6, pre-birthday.
How did he do it, and did she see it?
I don't know the details on his suicide. I just know that it really messed with her, knowing that her dad...
I don't know that they can.
Yeah. So by 13, she tried to commit suicide herself. And Susan's mother, Linda, had married a man named Beverly C. Russell Jr. And I know this is super stupid of me, but I never thought of the name Beverly as a unisex name.
I wouldn't either. Was it he?
Yeah. Yeah. So Beverly was a divorced father of 3, and he was a stockbroker and a member of both South Carolina's Republican community and the Christian Coalition.
When did they get married? After the suicide attempt, or like when was?
I think it was around the suicide attempt age that she started dating him.
Because maybe that was a attention seeking.
Oh, just you wait. Because not only was he dating mom, but he was also molesting his now 15-year-old stepdaughter and frequently fondling her breasts and genitals. Let you have your
I got
silence
no
there.
comment on that. So you said he had 3 other kids. Are they boys?
I'm not sure.
Because maybe he didn't. Well, maybe he did fondle his own kids, but I could see it be maybe if he's got boys, he didn't.
Well, there's more to this than meets the eye, and I'm not going to spoil it for you just yet. But in 1987, when Susan was 16, she told her high school guidance counselor and her mom about what Beverly was doing to her. And Linda confronted her new husband, and he swore up and down that he would not do it again and agreed
What?
to go see a family
What?
therapist
What the
with the
fuck?
rest of the family. Yeah.
I didn't see that shit coming at all. I
Yep.
won't
He
squeeze her
fucking admitted
titty
it.
anymore. It'd be like, yeah, get the fuck out, you fucking creep. How would you even sleep
I
next to somebody like that? That's not a recovery thing. No. What
No.
the hell is wrong
She
with her
like
mother?
this mom finds out, and the guidance counselor find out that he's been raping the
I thought you said
15-year-old
he
and
was
fondling.
squeezing
Well,
titties.
okay, so molesting, remember we looked it up that one time, and it can mean raping of.
Can and is happening. I feel like I need to know where the line's drawn. Are we doing cop and feels and an
I know it.
inappropriate touching, or is there things being inserted?
I know eventually, I don't know at which point, but I do know things become inserted at some point during their, I'd say, relationship. But anywho, I just find it disgusting that her mom trusted that he promised
He's
up and down that he won't
he's
do it no
working.
more.
He's working on it.
And then, surprise, surprise, in February of 1988, so about a year later, it was revealed by Susan during one of their therapy moments with the family that Beverly was still abusing her. So, again, at 16, Susan tried to commit suicide again. Her reason for this suicide attempt was that her older married coworker at a Winn-Dixie supermarket broke off the affair they were having to stay with his wife. Yeah. Her suicide attempt was to try to overdose on aspirin. So I feel like it was more of a cry for help than it was an actual suicide attempt.
Yeah, adjusting to all the molestation and wronging everyone's doing,
Right.
and like she's an adolescent.
And then a year after that, so 1989, Susan told her psychiatrist that the affair or inappropriate touching by her stepfather, Beverly, was consensual. She told the psychiatrist that she was jealous of all the attention her mother was getting from men, so she decided she wanted to seduce her stepfather. And then she supposedly lied about it being inappropriate, like unwanted, just to try to break them up. And when Mal decided to stay by her husband, yeah.
Don't just
And then that's,
yeah.
well, it's just, I don't, it's so freaking twisted because even if she thinks she's consenting, she was between 13 and 15 when he started inappropriately touching her. So even if she thinks she consented, she did not.
Have you ever watched that movie though?
No, whatever you're saying,
Preacher.
I have not.
I know you don't get into the seedy underworld of them real bad teenagers, but I'm pretty sure it's called 13. And that girl actually talks about shit she went and did. Like, you should watch it, but it will horrify you, mainly because you got girls that are going to be teens soon. But I would believe the whole 13-year-olds trying to do the seducing thing because they're all those hormones making them a little on the crazy side. Not to say he's not
Yeah.
playing a role in this.
Well, either
But
way, even if she's trying, he should know better. Aside from the fact that he's married to her mother, he's a grown-ass man.
what's his IQ?
Not high enough.
Clearly, because he's letting somebody else do all the thinking.
And then this is when Susan meets another coworker at Winn-Dixie. So she needs to get out of her coworkers and
No. Yeah, I
family
don't.
members. She needs to open up that pool of dating.
No, she
But
does
that's when she
not.
meets.
She needs to work on some me work kind of thing. Heal from the
Hey,
inside.
hey, we heard your last case about self-pleasure and what kind of road that leads to.
I didn't say there needs to be any sexual side to this, as in she needs to figure out what makes her happy before she can add a
I
we to it.
know. I know. But that's not what she does. She meets her coworker, and his name was David Smith. and he was raised by strict Jehovah's Witness parents. After a brief courtship, David and Susan got married. She was 19 and already 2 months pregnant with their first son, Michael. Her now new husband, David, also had a lot of family stress. His brother had passed away from Crohn's disease, and his father attempted suicide after the brother or son died. Do what?
That you said
Who
his
bonded over?
dad committed
Yeah.
suicide?
No,
So did
tried.
hers.
He tried.
Yeah, but
He
she's
was.
got a lot of experience in that side of things, both in the death
true.
aspect and attempting suicide.
It's true. They were already married at that point, though. So I feel
I
like
know,
if
but
you
that
get
can
married,
still make you
if you get,
closer.
yeah. So I'm not going to say they shouldn't have gotten married as well, because
They didn't get married for that, but it was the whole her being pregnant side of things.
Sure enough, baby on the way, and as pretty much as soon as the I do's were over, the happy couple were arguing and both cheating on each other.
Sounds healthy.
Sure does.
With her
And
stepdad or her father-in-law.
so in 1993, one of Susan's
Just
affairs.
gonna ignore that, huh? Oh,
So
you
you kind of peg. You are right, but not with the father-in-law. She was carrying on her affair with her stepdad
It's disgusting.
as an adult.
But you know what? He kind of conditioned her a little bit. You figure
Sure
this
did.
is like, what, 6 years in the making? It's disgusting. It's probably his baby.
So I question that also, but I don't think a DNA test was ever done. But anywho, so in 1993, one of Susan's affairs was with her boss's son. He was 27 years old. He was handsome. He was rich. His name was Tom Finley. And she was on again, off again with her husband, David. And David would later say that money became a big issue between him and Susan.
She's having an affair while she's pregnant?
So at this point, she's no longer pregnant because she's got her 2 kids with her husband.
Whoa!
Well, I would guess
She
that
went
they're
from
with her husband.
19 married and pregnant to shortly after they got
They're
married, they were
sleeping
arguing and
around.
cheating on each other. So at
Yeah.
what point did the cheating start?
Pretty much as soon as they said I do.
So then she was pregnant when she was sleeping around.
Yeah. But I don't know. She cranks out 2 kids in the process.
Just gonna say it. A lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Sure is. But anywho, so her and David were on again and off again. And David would also admit that at times things did get physical between the two of them. And he admitted that he grabbed Susan by her arms and dragged her out of their bed and tossed her out onto the front porch. But he said he didn't really throw her down or anything. He claims that he set her down on the porch
He let
because she
gravity
said,
do the work.
right? But he said he was sick and tired of hearing her say she wanted to move out. So
here,
I get
help.
that. Right. I totally get that, because if you guys are cheating on each other and constantly breaking up and getting back together, just freaking go. And you've got 2 kids in this mix.
Okay, I feel like the second, if he was aware she was screwing her stepdad, I'd be like, so I'm out of this Jerry Springer family tree.
He didn't know. So anyway, so she's got her boyfriend and her husband, they're on again, off again. David went and filed for divorce in September of 1994. So a few months after the whole toss her on the porch kind of deal. And Susan's latched on to her boss's rich son, Tom. And Tom and Susan dated for about 10 months. And in October of 1994, so a month after David said he wanted a divorce, Tom wrote Susan a letter saying he wasn't ready to settle down in a relationship with children. And seeing that her husband filed for a divorce and her richy rich boyfriend dumped her like a hot potato as soon as she was single and available, Susan's way of dealing with being dumped was to tell Tom she was sleeping with his dad the whole time. And he said, get the hell out.
That'll bring him back.
Right? Susan was pissy, and she decided that being angry and having children, and she's getting divorced, and she was young, that she was so fed up with everything. Because you figure she's 23 years old and she's about to be divorced with 2 kids. And that would prevent her from landing her rich, handsome 27-year-old boyfriend and turning him into a rich husband. So a few hours after arguing with Tom On October 25th, 1994, Susan put her 2 little boys in the back of her 1990 Mazda Prodigy and set out for a drive. Now, if you remember from the beginning of this, Susan
This
claimed
is
she'd
when
been
it all
carjacked.
happens.
Claimed she'd been carjacked by a black man. Police were suspicious of Susan's story about being carjacked, and their main suspicion of her story was how the carjacking occurred. Because, according to police and anyone with common sense, the light would not have turned red if there were no other vehicles at the same intersection. So Susan insisting that there were no other vehicles around means the light would have stayed green and she wouldn't have stopped, therefore she wouldn't have been carjacked. And with not much more than their guts to go off of, police began to turn their investigation towards Susan and not some mysterious carjacker.
Good police work.
Uh-huh.
I was going to say. None of it made a lick of sense anyhow.
Right? After several days of the boys missing, police began to search nearby lakes and ponds. They had searched the John D. Long Lake, where the boys were eventually found. But on the first search for the Mazda, the little boys, they weren't found, neither was the car, because police thought the vehicle would only go about 30 feet in off the shoreline. So they only searched 30 feet off of all the different lakes and bodies of water.
How did she get the car over there? Was it within walking distance of where she was supposedly carjacked?
So I didn't look that up.
I'm just saying it sounds super weird that if she drove it off over in a lake area, but where does she turn up when she gets carjacked? I'd imagine there's a big chunk of time that's missing.
Probably. Or unless you're right, and it was nearby, and she just waltzed herself over to a nearby store and went in and put on a show.
And even that doesn't make any lick of sense anyway, because who carjacks a car to drive it into a lake with kids in there?
So her whole thing would have been that they stole the car and just happened to get the children in there. Who knows what they were planning to do with the car if it was a carjacking.
Yeah, but they could have just set the kids loose.
Yes, I know that, but it wasn't a real carjacking. But she was
I know, but I'm just trying to get behind the lie, and it's not even a good, she didn't even put any effort into that lie. She didn't think out, like, okay, so they steal the car to drive it into the lake? People
She
don't
never
do
said,
that.
dude, she never said that they drove it into the lake. Police didn't believe her, so they were looking for where she could have dumped the car. So that's why
I
they
thought you
started
said the
searching.
car was in the lake.
They eventually find it in the lake, but she never directed them towards the lake. The police were just going off their suspicions. No,
I'm
your
just saying,
argument makes no sense.
No. I'm saying when they inevitably would find the car in the lake, because people find the cars in the lakes, that when they do that, it wouldn't make sense that they carjack her to drive the car into the lake. Again,
that's what she was banking
not a
on.
well thought out plan.
Kind of was, because they searched the lake and didn't find the car.
I thought they do.
Let me finish if you're done arguing the facts.
She's just stupid.
Yeah, she's fucking stupid. So on November 3rd, Susan finally confessed to police. And I think because the police kept pressing on her about, like, dude, we know you're not telling us. The story doesn't make
sense. That there's a huge chunk of time missing between when you said you were carjacked and when you reported being carjacked.
The light wouldn't have freaking changed to make you come to a stop in the first goddamn place to give you the opportunity to be carjacked by anybody else. Yeah, that whole thing. They didn't believe it. So 9 days after the kids went missing, she said she finally confesses to police and tells them that she rolled her car straight into the water of John D. Long Lake and left her 2 children strapped in their car seats, slowly drowning as she walked away from the scene. It took approximately 6 minutes for the 1990 Mazda Prodigy to fully sink into the lake. The car was found by police 122 feet from the shoreline, so a bit further than the police had originally anticipated.
What body of water is this?
It's a lake, John D. Long Lake in South Carolina.
Thought she was enjoying every minute.
Sure did. He also didn't know that his wife had been dumped by a rich young man because that man did not want to be in a relationship with kids. And through all of this, it turns out that Susan had carried on sleeping with her ex-stepfather, Beverly, right up until a few months before she murdered her babies. So not only was she cheating on her husband with her stepdad, but she's also cheating on a rich boyfriend with her stepdad.
I got no words for that.
I noticed. Susan's defense attorneys would argue in court that Susan's murderous actions were not because she was evil, but stemmed from her father committing suicide, all of the sexual abuse she had gone through, and all of the rejections that she'd experienced in her life. They also claim that Susan drove to the water's edge to, kill the boys, but also to commit suicide. Her defense attorneys continued this line of bullshit and said her body willed itself out of the sinking car, which, bullshit. Yeah, her attorneys were saying that her body, without her conscious mind being aware, willed itself from dying and she got out of the car. That's the stupidest line of defense I've ever heard.
Is her attorney now in rehab?
Anyway, the prosecutors said, her defense is a bunch of morons. And they painted Susan in a very different light. And he said that Susan was a murderous manipulator who killed her 2 children to try to win back her boyfriend, which, by the way, is the same boyfriend that when he tried to break up with her, she's like, I've been fucking your dad. So she's an idiot.
Definitely has boundary issues.
She just didn't know that it's not normal to sleep with everybody's paw. The jury deliberated for 2.5 hours on July 22nd, 1995, and 24-year-old Susan Smith heard her guilty verdict. During the sentencing part of Susan's trial, prosecutors fought hard for the death penalty, but the jury had compassion for this monstrous mother and sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 30 years. Which, I know you ain't too quick with your math, Claire, but that's pretty soon. Because 1995, 30 years. Mm-hmm. You would think that prison would make her sit still, think about what she done did. But no, Susan was constantly getting written up for different infractions. She was caught smoking weed and possession of narcotics. She would self-mutilate.
Ew. You know how that was snuck in.
Well, yes. And she would also self-mutilate. And by the way, she was sleeping with the correctional officers.
Probably the warden, too.
In 2000, Susan was 28 years old, and she was in trouble for having sex 4 times with 50-year-old prison guard Lieutenant Houston Cagle. He was obviously fired, and he was charged and arrested. He pled guilty and went to jail for 3 months.
Did he ask if he could share her cell? It'd save him time.
It's disgusting. I wonder if he was married, actually, because I feel like...
Was it a hard day at work?
It was pretty hard. In 2001, a prison captain, Alfred Rowe, also pled guilty to having sex with Susan. He was only sentenced to 5 years probation.
Turns out when they all went to the same clinic for the same bout of antibiotics.
Sure did. And then twice in 2010 and once in 2015, she was disciplined on drug charges, losing privileges like TV for more than a year. I should tell my children about that.
Whoa.
Not all of this.
No TV for the whole year. Oh, that's pretty steep.
Right?
You know, she's just going to turn to extracurricular activities.
She's got to find her exercise when she can't go out to the play yard.
She's doing something.
Yeah. In 2015, she wrote a letter to South Carolina State because she's tired of hearing all the theories on her. And she said, "It has been hard to listen to a lie after lie, and after not being able to defend myself, it's frustrating to say the least. The thing that hurts me the most is that people think that I hurt my children in order to be with a man. That is so far from the truth. There was no motive, as it was not even a planned event. I was not in my right mind. I was not in my right mind." She's an idiot.
So I believe it wasn't really planned because it doesn't seem like it was. However, she didn't do that for her kids for one man. It seemed like it was several penises.
Sure was. She killed her kids because they were an inconvenience to the lifestyle she wanted. Period. So Susan claimed that she had a temporary violent break from her normal mental state, and that caused her to kill both of her children. Now, while prosecutors do not agree with that, the state will be forced to actually consider Susan's story because she's up for parole on November 4th, 2024. Dun, dun, dun. Yep. And if you're curious about David Smith, he went on to get remarried to a woman named Tiffany in 2003. The happy couple have a daughter named Savannah together, and David admitted that he was kind of scared to have more kids, but that he's glad he did because his daughter and his new wife have been a blessing. You're an idiot. And that is our misunderstood. You can't see me, Claire, but my eyes can't roll further back in my skull when I say that. But that is this misunderstood monster of the week, Susan Smith.
I think we understand her just well. She likes sausages, the variety pack.
It's disgusting. Anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.